Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, I am lucky. And let me tell you why I'm lucky today. Can you imagine what it would be like to have the opportunity to interview one of the most beautiful women in America? Not just beautiful, but let's go deeper. Let's talk about an ESPN announcer, reporter. Let's talk about one of the best upcoming podcast developers and hosts. Let's go deeper. Let's talk about a Miss Universe runner-up. Let's talk about a Miss USA. Now that's deep when we say USA. That means you the shit. Let's just call it what it is. That means you the shit. You got USA behind your title. But more importantly, with all those titles, there was a journey to get there. A clear beast mindset mentality to get there. But more importantly, there also was setbacks, because life gives us those setbacks. Today on the show, we have a beautiful lady whose now mission from the bright lights of television and modeling and is now to help people understand how to change that mindset and the outcome. Listen to what I'm saying. The outcome that a mindset can have on your whole entire journey. That's deep. I'd like to welcome to the show the one, the only, one of the most beautiful women in America. She has that title to go along with it. The one and only Miss Gretchen P. Jensen to the show. How you doing, baby girl?
Well, good morning, and thank you for all of that. That's very kind of you.
Man, your resume is almost like that of the NFL, NBA. You know, it's perfection, perfection at its fullest. But before we get started, tell the viewers a little bit about before we get into your mission today.
Tell about myself. Well, my name is Gretchen. I live in Salt Lake City, but I'm from Texas. I was back in the era. I started my career in television right after Miss USA, and that was when ESPN only had one network, and there was only maybe 4 women in sports, so it was brand new for the female audience, but super exciting. And I was there long enough to see them expand ESPN2, and then now, now it's crazy. It's crazy big. Have 5 kids, been single mom for about 17 years. And, I've had a really blessed career. I started in modeling when I was 14 years old. I was one of those discovered type people, and it's led me all over the world. And so I've just enjoyed so much of life, and I'm happy that I get to speak about things that I'm completely passionate about.
Let's talk about the first part of your journey. Let's talk about this being discovered. Well, and then your first opportunity to actually compete in the 1989 Miss USA and then becoming the runner-up to Miss Universe. What was that like for you? How did that journey even take place?
I'm almost 6 feet tall, so I think being tall, you were just kind of a magnet back in the day, back in the 1800s, where it was just like, hey, you're tall, you should be a model,
Right.
And so I was in Dallas, photographer. The whole story you see on Hollywood, a photographer saw me, wanted to do some images, sent them to an agent in New York, and that's basically I went to New York as a teenager, and I started working. And then that kind of led me, in honesty, Miss Texas I did on a bet. It was kind of a challenge, like, hey, I bet you can't do a pageant. I'm like, I've never even watched one. Okay, what can't be that hard?
Right.
Well, at the time, Texas had won 3 years in a row Miss USA. So there was a huge media hype on, can Texas do it again?
Right.
So I go to all these professionals, all these people that tell you how to win a pageant, and I ended up finishing second runner up, and I was devastated. I was like, are you kidding me? I am not second runner up. This isn't happening. But I realized I became everything that all these experts said to be. If you do this, if you say this, if you look this way, you're going to win. And it was everything that wasn't me.
Right.
So I kind of made the decision, the mature decision. I'm going to go back and I'm just going to be myself. And I'll glean from important things, but I'm not going to change who I am. And if I win, great. And it ended up winning. Now Texas had won 4 years in a row. So huge. It was a million something viewing audience just for the Miss Texas pageant. So now I win and I go to Miss USA, and it was like, oh my gosh, the Wall Street Journal quoted 1,000,000 to 1 that Texas would win again.
Mm.
And so here I'm a 22-year-old kid going, oh, okay, well, that's a lot of odds, but
Right.
they don't know me. And so ended up, I just said, dear God, if you can use me more as Miss USA than just Gretchen, I'll serve you the rest of my life with this title. And so it just kind of blossomed and bloomed from there. It's been amazing. Miss Universe was so much fun. It was like living in a field trip with 72 different countries and cultures and languages, and it was really, the older you get in life and the more you
Hmm.
look back, you really appreciate things a lot differently.
Hmm.
At the time, you're immature and you don't know enough about life and you're just kind of going with it. But I look back now and I just think that was just such a wonderful, amazing experience that I was blessed with.
You mentioned something, and this usually happens with individuals that's in your field or even in sports. They want you to change a little bit of who you are to basically feel like this is the route that you need to go. What was the things that they wanted you to do before you switched back to being yourself? That, and more importantly, when they told you to do these things, why was it uncomfortable for you?
Let's go back to the difference between Miss America and Miss USA. Miss America performs a talent. Miss USA is primarily based on an interview because the role that you have as Miss USA, you're a goodwill ambassador, not only to your sponsors, but to major corporations and so forth. And so the interview is huge. I remember I went to this interview coach and he said to me, everybody has a story to share.
Right.
And you have to make sure that your story is unique and different so that you'll stand out among the other 130 something gals that are there at Miss Texas. So at the time I had been down to South America. I was doing this modeling job and I was stranded on the Amazon River. And he said, that's your story. That's what you're going to tell. And he goes, I don't care what they ask you, you're going to get that story out. So for instance, if they said, Gretchen, what's your favorite color and why? Because they always ask stupid questions. You would say something like, oh, it's white because it reminds me of this cloud that I once saw when I was doing this modeling job in straight on the Amazon River. And so to think along that process of always, 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 always having to give that story out, that's not natural. People don't talk that way.
Right.
And so I was so kind of just programmed to making sure that I walked a certain way, that I said a certain thing, that I looked a certain way, and none of that's natural either. And now, as I judge girls in pageants or I train girls in pageants, the ones that win aren't necessarily the most beautiful or the most polished, but they're the most real and authentic. And you have a connection, you have an energy connection with them. And those are usually the ones that win. And so I just thought, I'm just going to go be me, and I'll try to be the best me. And maybe they like me and maybe they don't. But if they don't, that's okay. It's just an opinion by a group of people on one night. Different group of people on a different night, you get a different winner. That's just how it is.
What did you take away from all that? Now that you looking back, what did you really take from both experiences?
I'm so happy that I went through my first year. Um, and I'm so happy that I had the experience at a young age to try to be something I wasn't. Instead of kind of going through life trying to figure it out, I kind of had a come to Jesus meeting quickly because it didn't set well with me. I didn't like feeling like I wasn't myself. And I've always kind of reflected back on that, Andre, like, you know what? Even in television and working, I remember when I first started with ESPN, I had to go to a coach to try to tone down the accent, and yet I was covering equestrian sports a lot, but they just there's certain things, especially in this field, and when you're on in a presence of the public, you have to look a certain way and this and that. Thank goodness now it's so much more accepting. They're even in the Miss USA pageant or the Miss Universe pageant, there's not one look. There's just not one thing. You don't have to be tall anymore. You don't have to have your hair a certain way. You can just be who you are. And it's so wonderful to see that women of all color and women of all sizes and women of all ages, everybody is getting the chance to do it on a competitive level that's all the same. You can even be married, you can have kids, you can do all kinds of stuff now
Mhm.
competing as Miss USA or Miss Universe. That wasn't the case when I was there.
How, what have you seen as when you're dealing with training future candidates? What are some of the things that you see that I, how do I want to say this? Stops them from being good. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you can't
The
tell
biggest,
people all the time good stuff. You gotta be
yeah,
authentically real with everybody. And everybody is not gonna go out there and win.
absolutely. There's only one winner on the stage, but you can become a winner in your life.
Hmm.
The thing that I work the most on, it's not getting them stage ready, it's getting them life ready. And so interview, because of my profession and because of my coaching, what I do is I kind of take them back to a place. Where are your stops? Where are your barriers? Where are your blocks? And generally that happens sometime in childhood, where we have an inner child moment where we're kind of stuck. We're not, through it, whether it's trauma or somebody was rude and mean to you, you don't know how to move forward from that age, and that affects your life as an adult. So that's where we get insecurities, or that's where we feel unworthy. When you have a state of mind that you feel unworthy, you can't progress. You
Mm.
can't get what you want in life. You have to be able to work through those, pull yourself up out of that. And then when you're walking into an interview, when you're walking into a job situation, when you're walking on a stage, it doesn't matter. When you're competing with yourself or somebody else, you automatically have a sense of worthiness and confidence that comes because you figured out who you are and your worth. Not the right answer for an interview, not the perfect dress or walk or hair or any of that kind of stuff. It has to do with an energy of who you are. When you go and you show up and you train people, you know what this is like. They all can have a perfect body. They can have things that are gonna appeal to the judges, but there's something about them that stands out. When
Mm.
you work on that them part, that's where you get a winner.
You're going into um, an arena where ego is there, confidence is there, but you also talked about something that's even more impactful, the trauma of getting over things at such a young age. What was your mindset like when all that was brought to your attention to get up there and do these things? Did you have any what we might call childhood traumas going into the um, pageants?
We all, every one of us has something that has held us back. And it can be something that was horrific, and it can be something that we've just developed insecurities. The developmental stages of a child, as far as the informative parts, are from the age of roughly 2 to 7.
Hmm.
So at some stage, we have developed, through whether it's our environment, our culture, our family, we have become who we are based upon our environment.
Hmm.
Now, going into the pageant, because I had never really watched one, I didn't know anything about it. This was all brand new to me. This was so brand new to me. And so, honestly, I kind of played the role. I became what I needed to be without understanding it.
Hmm.
And, going about and moving on through life, that's not a good way of living, because you're not really enjoying yourself. I remember one time I was at Madison Square Garden and I was doing a live concert, sold out show with George Burns and Bob Hope. And I was singing a song with Bob Hope, and he would interrupt with his monologue of jokes. And anyway, I had been on the road and met up the day of the show for rehearsal, and he was like, "That's not what we're doing. You don't know the song right." And he was changing everything. And I just remember at a young age going, "Okay, girl, you got to get your shit together, and you've got to do this the way he wants you to do it."
Hmm.
And that's just it, you know. And so I learned quickly, like, you can do hard things. You can do that. You can put your mind to something and you can do it. And then you'll work out the fear later.
Hmm.
But it really wasn't until cancer that I got real with me, that I became faced with that little girl. And to be honest, my whole fight to live was because of that little child.
Hold that thought for a minute before we get into that, because I know that's a journey within itself. You come out of the Miss America, not yeah, the Miss USA and
Yes.
Miss Universe
Mm-hmm.
pageant. When did the shift happen to get into broadcasting, and how did that door for ESPN open up for you?
When Miss USA was over with, you know, of course, that was before social media. That was just when AP, Associated Press, was around.
Hmm.
And, you know, to be honest, as soon as they have a new winner, they're kind of like, "Okay, hun, bye bye, good luck." So you're on your own. Um, and I was trying to work on a show. I was creating a show with another friend of mine who'd been in television for a long time, and it was basically a show about the American cowboy. I have great passion for equestrian and rodeo and all that kind of stuff, being where I'm from. Well, it became available that there was a position opening up with a show. Now, what happens with ESPN? There's a lot of productions that buy into the network. You purchase to have your show on their network. You're not actually in Bristol, Connecticut doing live stuff for ESPN. You're with a lot of production companies that feed in, right? So there was an interview with a show called America's Horse. It was all about the quarter horse of America. And I went in, I went to Tulsa, flew in, did the interview. They had no idea I was Miss USA. And I, you know, other than doing a cajillion interviews, I did Star Search prior to Miss USA to get me ready for Miss USA, because it was kind of the same thing. You have an onstage question, you're modeling, you're thinking off the top of your head. So I had very little experience in broadcasting. I had a ton of experience doing interviews, but
Right,
it's different when you're thinking and formulating your own questions, or when you're
right,
interviewing somebody else. It's a whole different ballgame, you know. And so there was a wonderful producer, like national producer with ESPN, named Dennis Dininger, who just kind of took me aside, and he would say, "I want you to write opens and closes, and I want you to write tags and teases. Whether we use them or not, I want you to start practicing and getting into formulating your sentences in a small version, so you can interview, or you can do a 30-second spot and you know how to finish, wrap, and all that kind of stuff."
right.
So it kind of was life on job training. I didn't have a chance to, you know, really take my time. I was just in the face of it. You know, live TV, and you understand when you've got an IFB in your ear and people are talking to you, you have to think from both sides of your brain, and you have to pay attention to a lot that's going on. I mean, there's a lot for a 20-something-year-old kid to go through, when that was before so much technology had developed that we have now in media, and that we now have as, you know, a ways to assist. Back then it was kind of cue cards off your head, in your ear, you know. It was just a whole different ballgame, but I learned a lot, and it has really perfected me to where my craft is now, because of kind of being thrown in the fire early on.
What is your most memorable moment with ESPN? Because this was before the Hannah Storms and the
Yeah.
women that are now. And a lot of people don't realize that. I remember when ESPN first basically emerged, nobody really knew who they were. You can see the development and the potential. Now they're a global icon.
Yeah.
What was some of the most inspiring moments for you while you were there?
You know, one that stands out to me, I got to do the International Special Olympics. I believe it was up in Minnesota, and athletes from all over the world with their families. It was such a tender, you're not interviewing those athletes like you would somebody else. Their idea of excitement and joy is a completely different level than a trained athlete that is, they're Olympic bound. It just was a very soft moment for me. I also trained and worked a lot with Olympic hopefuls. So I would talk to high school kids that were training for the Olympics,
Hmm.
seeing their dreams kind of come, basically right in front of them. That was exciting. I did the Bud Light water ski tour where I toured all over the country, mainly Florida, and got to be a part of that whole series. Again, Andre, these are topics in sports I don't know anything about. I've never been,
Right.
I'm not an expert in these things, but it was so fun to just be, to be in their world and to be around any athlete that has trained and dedicated their whole life to that. Um, just lost my ear. And so I love that. I worked for several years with the National Finals Rodeo, which is going on now in Vegas. And that's the top rodeo athletes, men and women from all over. And I look at everything. I think probably the most exciting one, the offshore powerboat speed racing. They launch those boats through a crane. They're so big, they're so long. You don't, it's not like you're sitting down, you're standing up, the G-force is crazy. And I got to ride in one. And I just remember I had just had my third child. I was still nursing and I thought, is my milk going to start just like spewing out because the G-force was so
Yeah.
crazy. Um, but it was so fun. And everything I got asked to do, ESPN asked me to go do the running of the bulls in Spain.
Oh, wow.
And it just everything, especially at that age, I
Yeah.
wasn't married, I didn't have any children, and it was just like, I'll do anything. This is so fun and so exciting.
Let's move forward with a more interesting part of your journey. So many beautiful things has happened at a young age, but unfortunately, you wind up battling cancer. Take us down that real quick. What was that like for you? And how did it
You
even?
know, yeah, it when I got divorced, I had pretty much given up my career because I had 5 kids and I was devoted to being a stay-at-home mom. And I worked here and there and I did things, but basically going through the divorce, I was like, I now have to reinvent myself. Like I have to make a comeback. I have to come back out of the dark and be like, oh, there she is. I was wondering what happened to her, or whatever. Um, so I was kind of starting in a lot of things. I was doing still modeling. I thought, oh, well, I can be like one of those old timey models, I can go that route. I was, I was 57, I think, 57. I was in Puerto Rico doing a modeling job, kind of like for Sports Illustrated type thing. Best shape of my life, never felt better. Um, Got home and immediately left for Tulsa for the Miss USA pageant. They invited a bunch of us old queens back. And so here I am, I'm going, and all of a sudden I started bleeding. And I was like, well, that's what the hell? I'm
Right.
57 years old. What's happening? So I go to Walmart, buy myself some tampons. I didn't even know, like I haven't been down this aisle in years. And I get to Tulsa and I think, oh my gosh, do I have a bladder infection as well? And I'm just taking cranberry stuff, and I thought, I have an appointment in December for my well check before the end of the year. I'll just talk about this then.
Hmm.
Come back, have my well check, and I almost forgot. It's like, oh yeah, last month this and this happened. And she said, well, let's go do an ultrasound. I just want to make sure because women after menopause that bleed could be a sign of cancer. But Gretchen, I'm sure you're fine. Look at you. You're healthy. I'm sure you're fine.
Right.
My whole life I have worked out. Not because of vanity, just because I believe in health so much. I
Hmm.
believe in the mechanics of the body and I don't drink and I don't do drugs and I eat well. I mean, everything was a recipe for health. So the ultrasound, I'm still there. They said, yes, we see a mass. Now let's schedule you a biopsy. It's so funny in this medical field, yes, we see a mass, but we want to see you in a month. And I'm like, a month?
Hmm.
I'm sure a lot's growing in a month. Can we
Right.
do this today? So I went back. month later, and she said, I'm sure you're fine. I'm probably sure it's scar tissue from having 5 babies, and I'm sure you're fine. But we'll call you in a couple weeks. I got a phone call that day.
Wow.
And, it was the call. I was home alone. It was in the afternoon. And it just, I have a lot of respect for people in the medical field when they have to make those calls, because I don't know how it is an easy thing to do. It was very matter of fact and off the phone. And she said, you do have cancer and you need to find a surgeon in your network because you need to have immediate surgery. Your cell growth of this cancer is very, it's very aggressive. So I got off the phone and I remember I just looked in the mirror and I connected with that little girl in me. And I just said, you are not a woman with cancer. You are whole and healthy, and you are not a woman with cancer. And then I thought, I'm gonna call my insurance broker to make sure I'm completely covered, because I don't know what's going to happen, And so I literally, it's interesting how the universe unfolded perfect timing for me. I was scheduled to have surgery in March. This was January. That's the soonest I could get in. And within a few hours, I got a phone call, and it was, hey, we have a cancellation. Can you come in a week and a half?
Wow.
Absolutely. And so the hardest thing about all of that wasn't digesting cancer, because I immediately went to the mode of, I don't have cancer.
Right.
This is not who I am, not a woman with cancer. But I do have to tell my kids. And I had to send a text out to say, I need everybody to come to the house tonight at this time. It wasn't something I wanted to call. I wanted everybody there. We'd been through a lot as a family, and this was something we needed to also go
Mhm.
through as a family. So it was interesting. Every one of the personalities of my 5 kids took on a different role and a different identity during my cancer. And I will tell
What do you
you,
mean by that? What do you mean different roles and different personality?
well, the initial day when I told them, my oldest daughter, she was kind of the cheerleader, like, Mom, if anybody can do this, it's you. Like, you're gonna do this. Like, we got you. And I was like, yeah.
Mhm.
And then my big sons, I have 3 sons, just big, and they were quiet, but their hug was something I've never felt before. It was very intense and very intentional. And then my middle daughter, her role, she was kind of quiet at first, and she took on the role of, I'll do the grocery shopping, I'll do cooking, I'll go get your medication from the pharmacy. So everybody kind of had a different position. I will say that, chemo days were actually some of my favorite.
Why is
So I
that?
was in chemo, and this is weird. I know people that are undergoing treatment are like, what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
Um, so it was about 8.5 hours of treatment.
Wow.
And 2 of my kids at different times were the ones that took me there. And literally, we were in a room for 8.5 hours without our phones, without a TV, just talking, laughing, crying. We went through, I mean, it was a magical, wonderful moment for me to just have with my kids. And it was another chance for them to see where strength can come from. I chose not to tell anybody I had cancer other than my family and very close people. So just a handful of people knew. And I did that because I didn't want to be seen as a woman with cancer. I know that when Jesus healed, he healed people because he saw them in their wellness. He didn't heal them because he had pity on them. And I
Mhm.
didn't want to be pitied. I didn't want to be, while people mean well, it's very common for people to be like, oh, my mom died of cancer. Or, oh, I've had so many friends die. Cancer's horrible, and I didn't want that energy, nor did I want cancer sucks. I'm going to kick cancer's ass. To me, it was like, cancer's a part of me. I'm not going to hate it. It's a part of me. I'm just going to love more on all the healthy cells and the healthy organs and all that's going well. I'm going to focus on those things. And then the cancer is going to have no other choice but to leave, because I focus so much energy on the good instead of focusing on the what ifs. I never read statistics. I never did any of that.
Mhm.
And so the mind shift for me was, I get to choose how my body's going to heal. The body follows suit of the mind. The
Mhm.
body does not navigate the mind. And so whatever I tell my mind, my body's going to fall suit to that. And that's exactly what happened. I had about 2.5 minutes of feeling sorry for myself and crying. And then I just looked in the mirror and I just said, nope, nope, that's not going to get you better. That's not what we're doing. I have too much life left to live, and this is how we're moving forward. And that's exactly what happened.
You mentioned you had 8 hours of no phone, and that's hard for people today. Let's get real. A phone is attached to
Yeah.
everybody. If they go down, back when I was growing up, we had to learn how to read a map. We had to learn longitude and latitude. And but let that happen
Yes.
today. We're all upset.
Time on a clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let that shit happen today is different. But now you're in there in a situation with chemo with the most important individuals in your life, which is your family. What are some of the things that you talked about? You
Mhm.
got 8 hours. What are some of the things that you talked about that you never would have thought that would come to the surface?
You know, I could have had my phone. I just chose not to. I remember the first time I went in for chemo, my oldest daughter, she went and bought magazines, and you know, magazines are almost like extinct. But
Yeah.
she went and bought all these magazines of either home decor or gardening things, things that we could really enjoy and think about. Because what I did was, I should be paid by Pinterest. I found myself on Pinterest a lot with any genre I could find that was a place where I felt good. Then I'm not thinking about how bad my body feels. I'm not thinking about the scare moments, you know, any of that kind of stuff. And so we literally would just open up stuff and daydream, and we talked about life. We laughed. I know that when my oldest son went with me, they had a really hard time finding a vein, and you don't all chemos through intravenous, you know, placement, and they couldn't find a vein, and it was brutal. And I said to him, Kate, you go step out. You don't need to see this. And you know, he, being the big strong man that he is, he was like, no, Mom, I'm here for you. But I could tell as my kid that was super uncomfortable for him.
Mhm.
But I focused more of the attention on them. You know, let's talk about things that you want in your life. Let's daydream about where you want to buy land where you can go fly fish. Let's talk about that. And we just expounded, because daydreaming is manifesting.
Mhm.
When you are in a state of daydreaming, you are actually in a state of manifesting, where you are dreaming while you're alive. And so the more you speak of things that you want, the more energy you're creating to get that. Like attracts like. So where your focus is where your energy follows. And so we just used that time to the point the nurses would come in and they'd be like, okay, you're done. I'm like, no, I am so loving this time with my kid, you know. And that was it was after COVID, but still everybody was on the mask and all that kind of stuff. So I could only have one person at a time. But you know, coming home, my the kids that were still there, I had one child that was like always on alert to make sure I had my medications and I had water and I had something to eat. And like I said, grocery store shopping was done. The only thing, I mean, you're going to understand this in your profession. Protein shakes were the only thing that I could really get down. But I said, in those shakes, I want you to fill it with spinach. I mean, fill it with everything that I should be
Yeah.
eating, but
Yeah.
I can drink it.
Yeah.
And my son was a master at that. You know, I could get down a shake, and um, it just kind of became our norm for many, many months. I did have one daughter. She said, Mom, I'm not comfortable going to the hospital. I'm not comfortable being in that situation, but I can do other things. I said, great, by
Right.
all means, great. You know, let's make this a memory that's good for you too.
Mhm.
But I do remember scans, being in the tunnels, and Andrea, there was a song that came on that was about, it was a mother's prayer, right? It's called The Prayer, and Andrea Pacelli. And I just, like, tears were just streaming down my face, because I thought of my kids, and I thought, I'm living because I want to have life with my kids. I want to see them live their lives. I want to see how it all turns out for them. And, you know, I thanked my body. Andre, I thanked my body at any moment I could. Thank you so much for taking in this wonderful air. Thank you so much, bloodstream, for doing all that you're doing. Thank you so much, muscles, that I have the freedom to do what I want. I talk to my body all the time. And going back to your question, you know, what was the pivotal moment? That was a moment of knowing who I was.
Mm.
It was no longer a moment of surface, I'm on TV or I was Miss USA or any of that stuff. It was, anything in our life, we have to know who we are in order for us to have peace and happiness. Because otherwise, we're just asking for somebody else to fill up our cup.
Yeah.
Well, we can't depend on other people. What you give to other people after you've filled your cup up, overflowing, that's what you give back. But your reservoir is filled because of who you are and what you've done.
Wow. I'm glad you are recovering. What's it like for you now? Like, is it almost done? Are you free, cancer free? What's the diagnosis so far?
They don't call you cancer free until after 5 years. You're
Okay.
called in remission. And so they just kind of keep a close eye. For the first 2 years, I was going in every 3 months for labs and 3 visits with my radiation oncologist, my oncologist, and my surgeon. Now it's interesting. Now when you're done with cancer and you have your last PET scan, they kind of just go like, okay, babe, go live life.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, I'm doing the research going, how do I get how do I get my body back to health after chemo? Because chemo just,
Yeah.
strips everything out. And so I literally with supplements and um, diet, everything I've been doing is trying to kind of keep a trajectory of healthy down the road. Because you're not taught how to get your body back to that state of being balanced and healthy. You're still kind of recovering from what chemo did. Chemo killed the cancer, so to say, but it killed a whole lot of other shit too that you have to repair.
Mm.
Um, so now I'm on, I go every 6 months to my surgeon, but I'm now at the place I go once a year to my oncologist and my radiation oncologist. Um, my testosterone level, and I know people don't really think about that for women, but our bodies equate estrogen into certain things. Well, I don't have estrogen anymore. They cleaned my garage. I don't have anything. And so it's a matter of how do I bring this stuff back? How do I bring it back and still be healthy? I think a lot of times when people are done with treatment, they're so focused on their hair growing back
Yeah.
that they're not really thinking about the internal, your gut health. You understand this, your gut health regulates everything in your body.
Yeah.
So when you have your gut health stripped, you've got to replace it. You've got to have your probiotics. You've got to have your liquid minerals. You've got to have all that to kind of start building that reservoir again so that you don't get sick in other ways.
And I think that you can testify to this. You really got to get your mind right.
You have
Accepting
to.
the news, dealing with the news,
Mhm.
recovery, and life after. It's really the mind game that you have to really understand. 'Cause I think once you get the mind right, everything else begins to fall in place. Because, like you just said, the mind and the body works hand in hand. If the mind tells the body what to do, it's going to start doing it. But
Yeah.
I know you're going to recover fully. I have no doubt. But you're doing some other things to amplify your message. Let's talk about these things, which I love. You have two great podcasts that are out, and one is with your BBF. Tell the viewers a little bit about that real quick.
So I do. I have two podcasts that are out, and they are completely different spectrums of the universe. Completely. When I was working on a show on ABC, there was a client that did investments for people that were widows or widowers, right?
Mhm.
And he kind of opened my eyes to the divorce rate in our country and the divorce rate for second time or multiple marriages after your first marriage, which was incredibly high. So my best friend is a family counselor, and I came to her, and she's been the relationship expert on a particular show at ABC for a long time. And I said, Camille, the fact that people are getting divorced so quickly and in a high level means they're missing the point.
Right,
Means they're either not healed and they're attracting the same thing, or they don't know enough about themselves.
right.
We need to focus on something that can help people get right with them.
Hmm.
before they ever go look for a relationship, before they ever start thinking, oh, somebody else should come into my life. Again, fill that cup up. No, 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 no. Nobody's job is to fill your cup up. Nobody's job is to make right what went wrong,
Right.
especially from somebody else. So we kind of developed this workbook type situation. It's called Starting Over. The acronym is SOS, Starting Over Series. And what we do is we basically talk about at any moment, in any part of your day, you have the ability to start over through your mind.
Mm.
You don't live as a victim. You don't live because of circumstances. You are not creating your space in your life based upon your reality. You're creating it by what you want.
Mm.
So in relationships, when people feel that they've been wronged or, they can't quite let go of something that happened to them, you're just keeping that energy alive and you're attracting more of it to you. So getting the power of knowing how to start over at any moment and recognize, oh, I do not like how this feels. I'm going by my feelings, my emotions. That is my indicator of where I am. You remember when you were a kid, because I don't think they do it now, it's all digital. I remember when you would stand on a scale and you had the balancing weight and then you had the one that would slide
Hmm.
until it was all even,
Hmm.
right? So the balancing weight is the core of who we really are, the
Hmm.
God in us. And the thing that we slide is, are we in alignment where it's balanced?
Mm.
If it's not balanced, this doesn't change, but we have to change to move to that balancing alignment. And that's what starting over is all about, recognizing what are my tools and how do I recognize where I need to make a shift, because I can't depend upon an environmental situation, a marriage, a job, my kids behaving a certain way. I can't depend on that being the reason that I have alignment. I got to do it myself. It's an inside job. So
Gretchen, most
starting over is about that.
Gretchen, most individuals that start these podcasts, the title usually has a deep connection with the creator. You came up with this. Was a lot of the ideas based on what you went through from start to where you at now with this particular podcast itself?
Absolutely. And not only for myself, but also my business partner, and that she sees this every day. She was kidnapped when she was 5 years old.
Wow.
And she always says my first client was my kidnapper, because in her mind, she had to get to a place where it was no longer, we talk about that inner child. Her trauma was, I'm going to be small. I'm going to actually, I'm going to let myself be overweight. So I'm not easy to be picked up. She's going through these motions of what happened to her being kidnapped. And at some stage of our life, we have to gain our own control and our own power. We no longer will be happy existing because of a trauma and because of being a victim. So for me, definitely starting over, I lived that every day with cancer. I lived it because you
Mhm.
don't feel good and you constantly are in a stage of getting results.
Mm.
What's that test show? What are they looking for? When you're going through treatment of cancer, they're not necessarily looking to see how much you're healing. They're looking to see what else is there.
Right.
So the negative concept is really kind of, we're looking for the worst case scenario so we can make it better. Well, how many times do we live that in our life? We're looking for the worst case. We're planning for the worst case scenario so we can try to plan to make it better. That's backwards.
Mm.
You plan the best case scenario and you don't think about the worst case. A lot of times people say, Gretchen, that's just not responsible. Yes, it is, because your energy follows where you think.
Mm.
So if you're planning for the worst case scenario, I remember I had a producer one time that said, you know what? That's just how I'm wired. And I said, bullshit. That is not how you're wired. That's how you've allowed yourself to be, but
Right.
that's not how you're wired. You were wired as a perfect, worthy person. Now start living that way. Start thinking that way. Start daydreaming that way. Start expecting goodness in your life. When you expect it, the universe goes, I get that energy. I receive that. I'm going to give you more of that. And that's exactly what happens. That's how manifesting is.
Your co-host, she's your friend, you're her friend. What do you guys bring to each other's space, universal space that makes the podcast a show to watch?
That's such a fun question. She she's intuitive, which makes it all spicy and interesting. So even when I went to her office before I told her I had cancer, I walked in and she said, "Something's up. Something's up with you." And I told her I had cancer and she said, okay, let's do this. And so I think when you have a relationship with anybody, whether it's a kid, a dog, a spouse, a boss, whatever it is, and you have that alignment where you both are after the same thing, it doesn't necessarily have to be a tangible goal, but you both have the same energy. You both have the same love for people, love for
Mhm.
yourself. When you bring two or more together in that kind of an alignment, that's power.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we have with our podcast because we both have such a passion to help people. And we are so firm in this testimony of this isn't something that we've created, that we've
Right.
thought of. These are universal laws. This is science. This is religion. This is whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
This is based and it's factual. And we have seen it. I've seen it in my life. She's seen it in her life and in her clients. And it's a passion that we share. And when you are in a state where you're sharing something that means so much to you, you have a conviction. It's not bullshit. It's not fluff. It's not like me trying to fake a sport and act like I know something about it because I got to be on TV. This is me. This is who I am. And, being in a place that I train people, I coach people you're all around the world on how to get this power and how to get this strength and how to understand your importance in this universe and that you are not a puppet. You are a creator. You work with God. If I had a piece of paper and I had the word God on it, and I don't care if that means you believe in Buddha, you believe in a stone, it doesn't matter to me, whatever your word is. And I tear that up and I tear it up and I tear it up. It doesn't matter. All of those little pieces still have it in there. And
Mm.
that's how it is with whatever you believe in. It is in you. So you are never, ever alone. You create with that. That is your alignment. Just like that scale, that is your alignment. And when you feel negative feelings, you're out of balance. You have to bring yourself up to that balance.
Now, tell me a little bit about this other outstanding podcast you got. I can't believe you have two podcasts, man. I don't know too many people with two. One is enough, but you taking on the responsibility of doing two. Tell the viewers a little bit about the
Uh,
second podcast.
You know what? It is the most irreverent, funny. We should have our own. I tell you, it's more than a podcast because when you watch it, you're actually seeing all that we're doing, and it is hilarious. So let me tell you the genesis of this.
Okay.
Now, we're two women in our 50s. We have both been in media networking for a long time, and we both have been stifled by the rules of the networks and what you can and can't talk about. But we also know as two women, there's a lot of subject that we want to talk about that
Mhm.
you can't on TV, right?
Right.
So we have a dear friend, she's a medical doctor. For Christmas, she gave us a little goodie bag, and in this goodie bag was a headband. For your listeners that are women, you understand this. They're kind of the big craze. They can be Hello Kitty, they can be reindeer, they can be whatever. Basically, it's pulling your hair back so you can wash your damn face, right? So we had these in there and we thought, well, we're filming the same day. We've got the same wardrobe on. What if we put these headbands on? Then you can differentiate which podcast we are.
Right.
But you know what we do? We go in, we have no script, we have no producer. We are two women talking about things that women talk about. Let me give you an example. Last week, there's a new beauty craze that's going around, and I just think, what's wrong with people? You ready for this?
Yeah.
Vagina nails. What? So you have your nails done, and then you either have it painted or you have stickers put on, all 10, and it is as if you got a drone looking down at a vagina. Okay, so we make a big joke about that kind of stuff. I know, I see your face.
Yeah.
But again, we are just women talking about women things,
Mm.
and we have the best time. Um, Interesting enough, I have 6 different shows that I have written that we are pushing out to networks because there's just such, with so many networks that are opening up, there's a need for new types of shows,
Yeah,
shows that are not, we've done a ton of stuff. We've
right,
done a ton of talk shows. We've done home redos. We've done all that. But
right.
there are things that we have created, and Back Home Beauties is certainly one of them that it's like, you know what? If you want to feel like we're sitting on the couch having a cocktail with you and talking about whatever it is we want to talk about. One time I pulled out, now she's a big, colorful gal. She's got eyelashes that are 12 miles long, and she's got lips that men love, and she's got big blonde hairdo, and she's all that, but she is so much fun, and
And
she carries around this.
she always keeps stuff in her bra that you never know what's going to be in there too.
So, you know why? Let me tell you something. I pulled out her purse one time. Camille has a U-Haul with a strap. She has more
Yeah,
shit in her purse, but it's very organized. And I said, Camille, your bra is the overflow for what you can't fit in your purse.
yeah,
And so, we poke at each other. We talk about things that we've been through, and we laugh our way. We call it giggle therapy. So if you're looking for a podcast that's just funny, we actually have a very large audience that's men, because they're like,
right,
I didn't know about that. Or we talk about things that women like or don't like about men, and they're like, I didn't know about that.
right.
So it's just entertaining, and there's nothing thought provoking that you need to glean and take away. It's just giggle therapy. That's all it is.
Well, you know what? Looks like you guys have produced two great podcasts. I'm really proud that I'm gonna call it what it is. You're free of cancer. I'm
Mm.
already putting it out there that you're really spreading the message to individuals that they need to understand. It's all about the mind and what you put in the mind. You generate positive thoughts, positive things begin to happen. How can the viewers reach out to you and know more about your podcast? Where can they find all this great information and comedy and the whole nine yards?
The whole 9 yards. Thank you so much. You can go to gretchenpjensen.com. That's my website. You can go on YouTube to Back Home Beauties. Also on YouTube is Starting Over. Those are also on Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google Podcast, any of your streaming places. Um, and then, we're just having fun. And I think I'm 59, and I just think, gosh, shouldn't life be fun? I wish I would have started, which is something I'm trying to teach my kids now. Y'all make sure you have fun every day.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, I don't care what it is, just make sure you're having some fun every day. So,
Gretchen, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show and share such a beautiful story. Make sure you guys subscribe, follow, like the whole nine yards. We need to support each other in this mission, especially now. As well as anybody in the entertainment field. We now have a platform where everybody's voice is heard. We're not here to judge, but you know what? We are here to listen. This has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.